So I was asked to give a context. I hope it's within time, because we all know that when we talk of situation of women, it's all issues. Mention has already been made about the status of the Philippines in the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Index. And yes, we're number 7 since 2006, top 10. And France is number 17 in the last 2016, I just checked. And I know that in the panel later we can go on and discuss this in more detail, whether we're really number 7 in reality or really just in the statistics that the World Economic Forum looks at. I also looked at the SIGI, which is not as known as the GGI, and this is the Social Institutions and Gender Index, which the OECD does. And it measures laws, like to what extent is our family code discriminatory? Do we have laws on rape and laws that protect physical integrity? Do we still have son bias? To what extent do we have access to resources and assets? And are we free to talk in terms of civil liberties? And we're not as good as France, which is number 2, meaning very high, very, very low discrimination, next to Belgium. And we're medium, somewhere in the middle compared to all the other countries. So we do have a lot of work still to do. So I'm going to go over various aspects like political participation, health, media, etc. Mention was already made by Senator Hontiveros as well, that there are 6 women in the Senate, now 5. But in the House of Representatives, it's constantly increasing. You're now 68, if I'm not mistaken, or more? More already, 68, but it's 29 compared to 27 the last term, okay? In terms of the cabinet, there used to be 5, and now there's 4, because Secretary Gina was not conferred. And in the Career Executive Service, or 3rd level deputy directors up to the undersecretary level, we only have 43%, short of the Magna Carta of Women mandate to have 50-50. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of women who compose majority of the secondary technical field to take the courage to take on more managerial positions, and also for appointing authorities like the president to really more consciously appoint more women in such positions. So participation of women in politics and decision-making is still hindered by, sorry, I've been looking at my own my own PowerPoint, and okay, that's where we are. Women's participation in politics and decision-making is hindered by reproductive roles still. Conservative mindsets, believing that politics and leadership are not women's spheres, and also because of the high costs of running elective positions, and women who do not work in their own income do not have the resources actually to do all the campaigns. The Magna Carta of Women says that we should undertake temporary special measures to accelerate the participation and equitable representation of women. We do not have a quota, and that's one piece of legislation I think that should, the Congress people and the legislators should work on, and I know that COMELEC is thinking about that. We do have a quota for the executive, but not for the legislative, and we know that in many countries who have quotas, they are able to elect more women in such kinds of positions. Now, media, yes, there's still persistent gender stereotyping and derogatory portrayal, and we thought we were getting better because of better ads of fathers' roles taking care of babies. However, I think may backlash ata eh. So, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in media, especially social media. and the use of ICT. There's violence going on. That's why we appreciate the electronic gender-based violence bills pending in Congress. There was a feature on cyber sex last night in Maring Winnie's show, and it's really rampant going on, and they think that there's nothing wrong because there's no touching anyway. If you post your nude pictures and sell them to foreigners, men, as well as local men, into the internet. And a lot of cyberbullying also going on in media. We do have laws that protect children, for example, and women, but these are not enough, and the enforcement is still wanting. The Magna Carta of Women says that we should address non-discriminatory, non-derogatory portrayal. There is a Media and Gender Equality Committee, which is chaired by the Presidential Communications Office. That's Chairperson Andanar, currently assigned to Assistant Secretary Banaag. This was created in the previous administration, and we've had a few meetings on this, and they have come up with such kinds of code of ethics. But I think we all know that there's a lot that needs to be done in implementing this code of ethics, in disseminating these guidelines so that we can really show that media is gender sensitive and not sexist and not misogynistic. The MTRCB does its job if there are reports of TV programs or actors or MCs who have derogatory remarks. They do conduct hearings and they do suspend or call their attention for such kinds of things. The Tourism Promotions Board, for example, has also given a directive against commodification of women in promotional materials for tourism. Let's now move on to economic empowerment. Labor force participation rate has been constant over the decades, where women hover over 50, 49, and the men over 76 to 80 over the years. So in terms of economic empowerment, the unpaid care work of women is still unrecognized. It still is wanting in terms of being redistributed and reduced. Gender segregation or stereotyping for various work-related vulnerabilities is still happening, where there's tracking of women in service sectors and men in the more technical manufacturing type. And in terms of women in the informal economy, there is still inadequate social protection and social insurance, and they do not usually enjoy employment benefits. Women migrant workers is really a big issue. Although a lot of remittance is received, more women contribute actually to the remittances among migrant workers, but we still hear of incidences of exploitation, economic and sexual abuse, inhumane treatment. And although the government is currently addressing the return and reintegration programs, a lot can still be done. For micro-entrepreneurs, convergence of efforts is important to ensure that they are able to get capital, credit, technology, skills, as well as their important links to market. And of course, we still see rural women, especially those in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas, who still are in poverty, under threat of environmental degradation and disasters, with limited access to and control over land, water, resources, affecting their food security as well as self-sufficiency. Lots of laws protect them, and I'm not gonna enumerate all of them. Yeah, you name it, we're very good at laws. It's the implementation part that we have to really work on. And also programs like the Household Service Workers Agreements for certain countries to protect our domestic workers abroad. Magna Carta says foreign service posts should have a GAD focal point so that they can better give their necessary assistance to their nationals. A few of them have shelters, especially those which have a big number of women migrant workers, especially in the Middle East. And they also deploy social worker attachés as well as labor attachés. The reintegration program in the Philippines run by the Department of Labor have a Filipina return to Balik Pinay, Balik livelihood, where they are given some capital to start up their businesses. But again, we remind them, is this sustainable? This will give them 10,000 pesos for haircut or something, you know. So we keep on working with them to ensure that they are able to provide more sustainable livelihoods for these returning migrant workers. Of course, there are good stories, like a former domestic who now has a call center in Davao. I mean, there are a lot of good stories as well. But of course, what we're interested in is continuously addressing the gaps. Job fairs are often done. They call centers, of course, safety nets and social protection. And I'd like to share our Canadian supported, because Mirna is here. Hi, Mirna. Yes. Our Canadian supported Great Women Project, which in our part one has seen good stories on enhancing women's economic empowerment when we converge the efforts of the trade and industry, science and tech, labor, agriculture, and partnered with the private sector, social enterprise group, EcoC Foundation, to ensure that they have markets. And we have a part two now, expanding our partnership with the private sector and cooperatives, because we know that if we do work together, she for she, and help the women micro-entrepreneurs in designing their products so that they can become more marketable, not just in the Philippines, but perhaps ASEAN and Europe maybe, then we can get things to work better for the women. For education, yes, we can be proud that there are more women who are enrolled and women who graduate. But of course, these do not talk about current development levels. So there are still a great number, if you count into thousands, who are not in school. And we want women also to go into non-traditionally women's fields such as science, technology, engineering, agriculture, and math. And we're seeing that even if enrollments are lower than the men, it's the women who finish, more women who finish compared to the men, okay, in terms of STEM programs, according to the CHED. CHED, because of the leadership of Chairperson Tati Licuanan, who used to be our chair and who used to chair Beijing Platform for Action, has already initiated and I hope institutionalized GAD programs, and Sister Mary John and I are part of a technical panel to develop policies and guidelines for universities who want to offer gender and women studies programs. They're also monitoring that schools, universities have their CODIs, or Code of Decorum and Investigation, to curb sexual harassment. Like they can't just now transfer a professor to another school. He's suspended totally, because that's the practice before. You know, move him to another school and he'll do the same thing, and the issue is not addressed. Okay. 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 So still, the issues are regional disparities. We're seeing literacy rates wanting in the ARM region. And the Magna Carta of Women says that we should continuously make our curriculum gender responsive. And thank God for Secretary Briones, who is now working finally on comprehensive sexuality education, as well as infusing a gender perspective in the school curriculum starting at grade school. For those who are not able to continue schooling, DepEd also has homeschooling and alternative modalities, and improving madrasa education for Muslim students as well as indigenous peoples education. And TESDA, of course, has continuously been offering non-traditional skills for women such as welding, electronics, automotive, and once upon a time, lady drivers. I don't know if they've sustained that. Lady bus drivers, remember? They did that. Health. This we did not meet in the MDG, and this continues to be a problem. We're still at 221 based on the last maternal mortality ratio of 2011. But what is most worrisome now is that those who are getting pregnant are getting younger. 1 in 10 is already a mother. And the statistic for teenage pregnancies, according to the YAFS, or the Young Adult Fertility Survey, is that it has increased almost double, 6.3% in 2002 to 13.6% in 2013. And we all know the consequences of teenage pregnancies. They stop school, even if the Magna Carta says that they are not allowed to be dismissed if they get pregnant in school out of wedlock. Problems in Catholic schools, though, sister. Not in Saints Co, but we've been getting inquiries and reports that in some schools they are not allowed to take the test, they're not allowed to return to school, and all that. So, Magna Carta says that we should have comprehensive, gender-sensitive, culture-sensitive programs to address women's health. We do have the RPRH law, thanks to all of us here who have advocated for it, but again, parts of it are under the temporary restraining order in the Supreme Court. And there is a big threat that we might not even have available in the near future contraceptives available for the women. So this, I think we should all try to work together and try to do your part as NGOs, because NGOs are actually allowed to dispense Implanon, which was on TRO, and contraceptives. It's the government which is not allowed to distribute these artificial modern contraceptive methods. Lastly, I think this is the last area on violence against women. According to the National Demographic and Health Survey, 1 in 5 Filipino women of reproductive age have experienced physical violence. And we hope that when the DOH does its next survey this year, this, I hope, gets lower or higher, 1 in 5. You know. This prevalence is lower, but it did not change from 2008 to 2013. The change was not statistically significant. And we do have reported cases to the police, which is constantly increasing, which does not mean that the cases are increasing, but I'd like to interpret it to say that more women are getting the courage to report their cases to the police or to the social welfare or to the justice system. Okay, so totally, as of the end of 2016, there are 40,000 cases reported to the police, all sorts of violence against women. And the VAUSI, or the 9262 cases, is now, as of December, 34,800. Because the figure I have is only up to September. So it's constantly increasing. Magna Carta says all barangays, 42,036 of them, should have a VAU desk so that the women have somebody to go to and seek help. The Interior and Local Government has counted, have received reports of 88%, that's over 33,000 barangays who say they have a VAU desk officer. Whether they know what to do or whether they're functional is something that we are working out with the Department of Interior as well. We do have a tool that is about to come out to assess the functionality of these VAU desks. So, we are about to launch the next strategic plan of the Interagency Council on Violence Against Women and Their Children, which focuses on 3 areas: primary prevention, which includes advocacies and campaigns and male involvement, and multi-sectoral response to ensure that there is a good referral network among social workers, local officials, health workers, prosecutors, and investigators, as well as the police, which I forgot to put the police. and cross-cutting concerns to ensure that mechanisms from the national down to the regional, provincial, local are actually working, a robust database to be able to track violence against women, as well as research. To conclude, I think I would like to call on all of us to fully implement the Magna Carta of Women. That is the directive that the President said in his first State of the Nation address. We are happy about, because it's the first time women is mentioned in a President's State of the Nation address. So down to the barangay level, he says, we should fully implement this. Let's all work together to eliminate abuse, exploitation, discrimination, and disparities, because we see they have not yet been bridged. And let us all be agents for change. Change is actually the theme that we are in now, and I speak as part of the government. And be the she for she, which the Philippines and the French has asked us to do today and for the rest of the days to come. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.